Hello, party people. How are you? So it's me again, Michael Colson, coming to you. And in this video, we're going to start talking about Hamlet. We're probably going to have multiple videos. It's a long play. It's, of course, Shakespeare's, in my opinion, his greatest play. Um, it is a play that really is about the human condition. It is about what it means to be a human being. So you're going to engage themes about those things that touch upon human nature, right? Um, how do we become sort of feel alienated or marginalized, or how do we fit in? How do we um, socialize with others? How do we deal with authority? Some of the traditional themes. How do you live a life without going nuts, right? Or kind of losing touch with reality. So madness is a major theme in the play. um, Revenge is a major theme in the play, where and this was a very common theme, a common trope in a lot of Elizabethan plays. Christopher Marlowe and Ben Jonson, they both wrote revenge plays. Thomas Kidd wrote a wonderful revenge play. Revenge was a very common sort of theme in a lot of Elizabethan plays, plays of the era. So we got that theme in the play. In with, of course, with the idea of revenge, we have the idea of morality, like somebody's to blame, some moral principles are at play. Um, Religion, of course, is a major element in the play. So is mortality, life and death are major themes. So is art and culture, and how art and culture is not only conveyed but distributed, and how it's created, and the role of the artist in creating art, and how art fits into culture. That's a major element in the play. So is like lies and lying and deceit is a major element. Sex, oh god, there's sex everywhere, right? Sex off the stage, sex on the stage. I mean, it's just sex everywhere is going on in the play. Gender, there's a lot of gender issues, of course, especially touching upon Ophelia and Gertrude. Uh, and when there's gender issues, there's also, you're going to find plenty of misogyny in the play. And there's all sorts of family drama in there, right? So what Freud would have called a family romance, and not happily, right? So in Shakespeare's time, marriage between two people meant a kind of a unity of two people coming together as one. And so you can only imagine, I mean, today, like if a woman, marries, and um, that the husband has a brother. Say the husband dies, and she hooks up with and ends up marrying the brother. Today, I mean, some people might be like a little like about that, right? Just a little close, little gross, right? This would have been a major moral issue in Shakespeare's time, because basically what it would have been amounted to is Claudius marrying and hooking up with his sister, right? Um, if his brother and Gertrude were married, again, that would have, and so the king obviously died. Gertrude um, is planning on marrying the uncle. That would have been amounted to incest in Shakespeare's time. And of course, it's a very sort of very subtle and very quiet commentary on the royals at the period of time. Not the queen, of course. You can never, ever, even tangentially, subtly, even tongue in cheek, critique the queen. That would not go well for you um, in the Renaissance in those days. Of course, Queen Elizabeth I was known as the Virgin Queen. She lived a very long life and was on the throne for a very long time. And in those years, she never married, okay, which is, hence the virgin part. Um, but in any case, that didn't mean that the other royals and the dukes and the duchesses and that sort of thing didn't marry and marry within the family, and they did. And so the play is kind of commenting on this sort of incestuous marital arrangements that some of the royals um, were involved in at the time. Okay, and that would have gone over interestingly well enough with Shakespeare's audiences. They would have kind of snickered at that a little bit and been in on the joke. You want to ask yourself, why does Gertrude marry so fast? Hamlet has a fairly um, pat answer to that. He thinks that his mother just must need a man or something, right? And just is full of lust and just needs to be you know manhandled or something. But um, that's not quite the full picture. So you want to think about anticipate Stephen Greenblatt's book Tyrant, and think about the transition to power, how vulnerable the throne would have seemed with the passing of the king, who was a reputable king. He was a powerful king, Hamlet's father. And that's commented on in the early sections of the play when they're talking about the lands that Hamlet's father was able to acquire by means of conquest from Norway. That's why Fortinbras is a problem, because Hamlet's father went into Norway in battle, conquered Norway, and by conquest, um, more or less annexed Norwegian lands. And once the king dies, Fortinbras wants that land back. Okay, so that's sort of highlighted in I think scene 1 or 2 in Act 1. But in any case, why does Gertrude marry so fast? It has to do with the transition of power and maintaining power. There's something to that, in the notion of stability and that sort of thing comes up early on. But there's other themes than what I just mentioned. So we talked about madness, revenge, sex, gender, lies, deceit, all those sorts of things. There's also the theme of fact and fiction. So what does this mean? So a fact is, let's write this down maybe in our notes. A fact is not just a statement of an opinion. A fact is a belief that happens to be true. You need good reasons, you need good evidence, maybe even expert knowledge or expert testimony to substantiate, to support your belief for it to be true. And so a fact is a true belief. It's not merely a statement of opinion or a statement of personal preference or personal taste. It's more than just something that a fact is not just true of me. It's not just subjective, right? Fiction, what is fiction here? Fiction oftentimes gets a bad rap. Fiction does not mean that it's untrue, that what you're reading is not true. That's not what fiction, that's not the definition of fiction. Fiction means that whatever is happening just didn't happen. Okay, it's not like a historical document. So fiction does actually convey very important truths, right? And you can think of some, classic literature that conveys important truths. Moby Dick, War and Peace, Anna Karenina, even War of the Worlds conveys really important truths about the human condition. Um, but there is that sort of very common dichotomy between fact and fiction. That's a major one in the play. The nature of illusory experience, so illusions, is a big part in there. Hallucination, right? So, what's the difference between experiencing something that's illusory and experiencing a hallucination? Um, there's certain points in the play where it's stipulated that Hamlet might be experiencing or having a hallucination, right? And one of the topics of debate early on in the play is whether the soldiers are actually experiencing an illusion, right? Or what Horatio calls a fantasy. So the other ideas could be, well, just because you believe something, that doesn't make it true. Wanting something to be true or desiring something to be true actually doesn't make it true. So then the believer could be deluded, right? So when someone is deluded, that means they're seeing something or they believe something that isn't there, that has no substance to it. Okay, so that is a kind of delusion. And delusion is, of course, associated with madness and kind of losing your mind or going off the rails in some way, right? Perception and belief is, of course, a major element in the play. It's going to come over and over and over and over again. Your perceptions, whether it's actually seeing something or hearing or touching, this is going to become a major element in the play. So the value and the role of perceptual experience, of having empirical evidence to support our beliefs. You got to keep in mind this when this play was written right around 1599, 1600, maybe as late as 1601. This is sort of the burgeoning of science. There was such a thing as English Renaissance science, and it was becoming more common and popular. Everyday people were becoming more and more acquainted with scientific concepts. And so the idea that our beliefs need to be based on empirical evidence, on, sort of touch and feel and taste and seeing things with our own eyes, that was a major idea at the time. Okay. And challenging this notion that seeing is believing. Okay. As we know, seeing is not believing. Okay. And that is a major theme in the play. Okay. And it comes up early on, as we'll see. Another idea that comes from out of Plato is this notion that ignorance is not bliss. So one of the things that motivates Hamlet is that he wants to know. He wants to know what the right thing is to do. He wants to know whether the father's ghost is telling the truth. So him pursuing and trying to circumnavigate the idea that ignorance is bliss. Well, it's not. Hamlet is restless for a reason, and that's because ignorance is not bliss. Okay, and this is a lesson that comes straight out of Plato and Aristotle. So there's some questions that, as readers, we're going to continually come back to in the play. One is, what do we believe? Okay, what do we believe? That's the first question. Number two, how do we believe? How do we go about acquiring a belief, hauling off and believing something, right? What's the requirements? Can you just, can a belief just be, true if it's meaningful to you? No. It is a belief. What makes something true? What makes, something worth believing? These are issues that's going to come up. All right. So what do we believe? How do we believe? How do we go about acquiring a belief? What is reality? So in this way, this play is a little bit like, Philip K. Dick's Minority Report, or like the Matrix movies. And there's going to be a fourth one come out. Keanu's going to reprise that role yet again. And I guarantee you, the question of what is reality is going to come up. All right. This is a kind of a very well-worn trope in a lot of Renaissance plays that come down to us in our own cinema. So what is reality? What is truth? Okay, is truth subjective or relative, or is truth objective, right? And that was a question that, of course, was debated in Shakespeare's time, but the answer would have been gone in the direction of like the Plato, the sort of Plato's views and Aristotle's views, which were being taught in universities at the time. And this is the idea that of course, truth is objective. Okay, it's not something that's just true of me and maybe not true of someone else. Okay, so these questions: what do we believe? How do we believe? What is reality? What is truth? These are the sort of questions that one wakes up to, that sort of, you become more interested in right about the time of Hamlet's age, right? So about 14, 15, 16, you're an adolescent, you're starting to kind of, wake up to the fact of growing up and sort of emerging from your childhood years. And you start asking these questions of yourself, and of others, and start asking, well, what's the point of it all? Right? What's the meaning of life? Why do I want to, grow up and be like my parents? What's the right music to listen to? Who should I have friends? Who should I befriend at school? What kind of clothes should I wear? Where should I go to college? What do I do after high school? What kind of what should I order at Taco Bell? I mean, these are serious questions for an adolescent, right? Do I, should I get a job to help me pay for my car and car insurance? I mean, Jesus. Um, these are the sort of questions that are kind of typical as, think of yourself maybe when you were a freshman in high school, or, kind of in the eighth grade, that right around that period of time. And you're sort of, in your bedroom at home with, the lights off, and you've got your cure on and your joy division, and your incense burning, and you're angry at everybody, and you got this angst, and you're a little bit depressed, and you wear black, and you paint your nails black, and put on the black lipstick, and like back in the day, listen to Depeche Mode's, Black Celebration album. And, it's a black celebration for reasons, man, because meat is murder, and the bomb is a reality during the Cold War. I mean, so I'm kind of trying to make Hamlet's predicament, a little bit more real for you. Before there was a Billie Eilish, there was Hamlet. Before there was a Robert Smith of The Cure, there was Hamlet. Before there was a Morrissey of the Smiths, there was Hamlet, right? Um, so keep in mind that what he's going through is some teenage angst, right? But at the same time, he's mourning his father. He's in despair. He's feeling the depths of ennui. And when we meet him at the opening of the play, he's kind of at the bottom point of his life. And, Claudius and Gertrude, they're basically trying to coach him and give him advice and say, hey, things are going to get better. Things can't be this bad all the time. Um, it's a Shakespeare tragedy. Baby, it's going to get worse. It's going to get a lot worse. Okay. So, strap in, because it's just from here, right? Downward spiral. But in any case, all right. So, I tried to highlight some themes in the play. Do keep in mind that when the ghost shows up, that's not weird or odd in any sort of way, um, for Shakespeare's audience. Okay, that would have been really scintillating and interesting. Keep in mind, today, these days, modern times, about 44 to 45% of Americans believe in ghosts. Okay. And now, over 50, about 55% of Americans believe in some form of the afterlife, whether that's kind of like a Judeo-Christian heaven, or some reincarnation. Reincarnation kind of goes together with a lot of the yoga practices and that sort of thing. So, today, a ghost on the stage would have been just sort of, I don't know, interesting. And we might be interested in the paranormal and the supernatural in various ways. Um, but keep in mind, in Shakespeare's time, this would have been very scintillating. It would have been like a specter, like a spectacle, worth really seeing. And his audience would have been a lot more eager to suspend disbelief, and they would have been a lot more willing to believe that ghosts actually exist. And of course, the belief in an afterlife was very common. We're talking about Protestant England at this time, which was dominated by the Anglican Church. And believe me, they do maintain that hell exists, that there is an afterlife, and those things are very real. So they would have been ultimately incredibly fascinated with the ghosts on the stage, and it would have been a marvelous spectacle to them. Um, Not terribly different than maybe the first time if you saw Exorcist, right? Think about The Exorcist. It's like you watch the film, and you're watching Linda Blair play Regan, and you start seeing her head spinning around, on her shoulders, and the split pea soup, spewing out of her mouth in sort of this projectile sort of way. You just can't stop watching, right? And you might be watching it in disbelief, but like, that can't happen. Well, of course, somebody's head rotating on their shoulders can't physically happen, right? Like, it's physically impossible. But, from a logical perspective, think of this rationally. Like, it's not logically impossible that there are ghosts or that there is an afterlife. It's not logically impossible that a young girl, Linda Blair playing Regan in The Exorcist, it's not logically impossible that her head can turn around, okay? And the projectile vomiting, or that demons can, crawl around and that sort of thing. Like, that sort of possibility is what, readers are like, huh, maybe that can happen. Damn, demons. Wow, gee, that's serious. That's worse than the impeachment. That's worse than the Iowa caucuses. That's worse than Eminem's performance on Oscar night. I mean, damn, maybe demons do exist. So, and then we watch the movie, and we keep watching over and over. We can't stop watching the demon in possessing poor Linda Blair playing Regan in that movie, right? Well, it's a spectacle, and of course, in Shakespeare's time, that would have been just awe-inspiring, right? Um, and they would have been ultimately fascinated in it and taken it very, very, very seriously. All right, so this is going to be just part one of the video. I'm going to stop now. I've been at it for about 20 minutes, and I'll pick up in the next video. Okay, so take a break, go get some coffee, or what have you, and I'll pick this up on part two. Okay, bye.